We begin with a warning about our climate. The window of opportunity to keep global warming at a minimum is closing more quickly than we thought. A new report from the United Nations says that the governments of wealthier nations are not doing enough to cut carbon emissions. Instead of limiting warming to some 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, the UN says that the world is now on track to be almost 3 degrees warmer by the end of this century. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says an unprecedented economic transformation is needed to limit the impact of climate change.
The window to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees is closing fast. Greenhouse gas emissions must be cut by 45% this decade. But as today's emissions gap report confirms, they remain at dangerous and record highs, and still rising. Commitments to net zero are worth zero without the plans, policies and actions to back it up. Our world cannot afford any more greenwashing, fake movers or late movers.
Well, Nathan Holtman is the director of the Center for Global Sustainability at the University of Maryland. I asked him whether the goal to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, if that goal is even still achievable.
Well, I think that the report shows that we really are in an emergency situation. It really is sounding the alarm. At the same time, I think it's quite important to note that 1.5, in fact, is not out of reach. I think that the report shows that where we are with current policies is tracking toward a much warmer world than what we are aiming for in the international and global community, but that it remains within reach in all of our countries to build the actions that are needed over the course of this decade to deliver the reductions on the order of magnitude needed to keep that 1.5 target alive.
Mr. Holtman, let me ask you, according to UN data, the world now appears to be on track to be about 3 degrees warmer by the end of this century. Now, assuming that that will happen, shouldn't our leaders be laying the foundation for building a more resilient society now and in the future?
So it's absolutely true that we're already committed to some degree of warming. And I think that it's urgently important that we continue to implement new policies across all sectors and all gases to reduce those emissions to levels that would be safer than the 3-degree projection in this report. At the same time, it's also very important, equally important, to be preparing for the impacts of the climate change we know we are already committed to.
I'd like to get your opinion on the various ways to raise awareness about the climate crisis. I want you to look at what happened in The Hague, Netherlands today. A climate activist gluing his head to the glass covering one of the most famous paintings in the world, Vermeer's Girl with a Pearl Earring. Now, we have to point out that the artwork was not damaged, but we have seen many such protests in recent weeks and months, and a lot of people are upset over this. I mean, would you agree that the shock value is fleeting at best here? I mean, what's your take on these types of protests?
Yeah, here's the thing. Climate change, I think, really is threatening the things we love in this world. It really is threatening cultural heritage. It's threatening lives and livelihoods. It's threatening our economic vitality. And those are real, genuine, present threats. So to me, it strikes me that we should be looking for opportunities to call awareness to that threat without creating additional risks for our current cultural treasures.
Nathan Holtman with the Center for Global Sustainability at the University of Maryland. Mr. Holtman, we appreciate your time and your insights tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the island nation of Madagascar off the east coast of Africa is on the front lines of climate change. There has been no significant rainfall there for several years. More than 1 million people live every day with the risk of malnutrition. Global warming, deforestation, poverty, and a lack of government action are all to blame. DW's Adrian Kriege visited Ambovambe in Madagascar's south, where the situation is especially alarming.
Masi Vuatsara used to be a farmer. Now all she is able to harvest are cactus leaves. A relentless drought has left large parts of southern Madagascar dry and unproductive. And it has left people like Masi in a precarious situation. She now relies on turning cactus leaves into cattle feed to survive. Since the rains stopped, her life has been turned on its head.
We left the village because of the drought. It's very difficult to find water there. There was no harvest, so we had to sell all our belongings.
Many others are suffering the same fate as Masi. She lives alongside them in this informal camp in the town of Ambuvombe. Trader Damiheri Salal opened the camp when he saw how many people had nowhere to go after being forced to leave their villages.
This old man lying here, he used to have 120 head of cattle. He was a rich man. But over the years, he had to sell everything he owned.
Here in the region, they call it kere, the hunger. People got used to not having enough food, going to bed hungry. It is incredible how they managed to adapt to this hostile environment. But of course, it comes at a price.
Magnirisoa Willi is in charge of the malnutrition unit for children at the hospital in Ambuvombe. She says many children here are chronically ill. Last month, 2 children came too late and died. This little girl is one of the 5 she is currently treating.
This baby is 17 months old. Her arm circumference is very low. It's in the red part. 98 millimeters. Normally, it should be 130 for her age. She still can't stand. Normally, at this age, children already run. She can't even stand up. We don't have good food at home. Sometimes we mix the nutrition aid that NGOs give us with cassava. And we cook the cassava with a lot of water.
Back at the camp, Damiheri Salal says he tries to help here and there by buying medicine and collecting donations. He believes mainly climate change is to blame for the situation, but he also says corruption by NGO staff and government incompetence are making matters worse. For decades, the government failed to invest in the region. The cycle of poverty gets worse as rainfall gets less. As she prepares the first and only meal of the day for her family, Masi Vuatsara asks herself why this is happening.
I don't know why the rain doesn't fall. It may be because of us humans. We don't love each other. Maybe that's why the rain has stopped falling. Or because strangers did something to prevent the rain. I don't know.
Some greens and 2 cups of rice. That's all the family of 14 can afford for today. Yet they still offer their neighbors to join, trying to help.